Hello and welcome back to Bookish and welcome back to Tag Tuesday. Today I'm here with a new tag, one I've only ever seen one place, and that's at Kazen's channel, Always Doing. She was nice enough to tag me to do this video, and the tag is called the Best Books You've Never Heard Of tag. Like I said, Kazen from Always Doing tagged me to do this video. The original was by Danika, Ellis, and I'll leave links to both their videos down below. The idea behind this tag is that you go to your GoodReads account, and if you go to Danika Ellis's account, our video, she'll show you how to order your books in GoodReads by the number of ratings they have. But the idea is to go into your GoodReads account and to, see if there are books that you've read that which have under 250, under 100, and then under 25 ratings in GoodReads. So that's the idea, and then you're supposed to, kind of talk about some of those books and answer three pretty broad questions about those books as a part of this tag. So I don't have a GoodReads account. Well, I do, but I don't really keep up with it because, as I was talking to my wife earlier today, organizing just feels like work, and as I've said many times before, I'm retired, I don't have to work anymore. So I don't organize my books there or really anywhere else. But I did want to do the tag because it gives me a chance to talk about books I don't normally get to talk about, which is one of those things I look for in a tag these days. My channel's been around for a little while. I do a tag almost every Tuesday. I'm trying to find tags and enjoy being tagged to do tag videos where I might get to talk about books I don't normally get to talk about. So I was really excited to do this. So question number one is, how many books you've read that have under 250 ratings in GoodReads? Like I said, I don't have a GoodReads account. So I just looked at my shelves, primarily my nonfiction shelves, where most of the kind of books that would have less than 250 ratings would be. I just looked at my shelves and wrote down a list of titles, and I just checked how many rankings they had in GoodReads. And I think my initial list, I had something like 30 books on it, and after looking at GoodReads, I came up with a list of 20 books. Now, there are some specific books that I'm sure have very few ratings, kind of studies of one specific aspect of American history over time, like the development of medicine or the development of labor unions in the United States. I'm pretty sure those would have made the list, and I just chose not to put them or all of those on my list. I chose titles which I thought were a little bit maybe broader in their reach and their interest. But like I said, I came up with 20 titles of books which have less than 250 ratings on GoodReads. Now, 5 of those books have 100 to 250 ratings. 5 of the 20 books have 25 to 100 ratings, and 10 of those books have less than 25 GoodReads ratings. So of the 20, more than half actually have less than 25 GoodReads ratings, and I think when I talk about question number 2, maybe you'll get some insight into why that would be, because question number 2 is, how did you come across these books? How did you find these books? How did you hear about these books? And Kazen, in her video, did a really great job of kind of dividing the books on her list. She had a much bigger list than me. Dividing the books on her list into 5 categories. And so I thought that would be a good way to approach this too, because it gives you some idea, I think, of why I read these books. So I only have 3 categories. One category I'm just going to call university presses. At one point when I was trying to and deciding whether I wanted to become a college professor, and I had some opportunity to teach some college level courses, which is what I ended up ending my career in teaching doing, I decided to read a lot of academic history, and university presses put out a lot of really excellent academic histories. And so most of the books on my list of these 20 books which have fewer than 250 GoodReads ratings are actually from university presses. And one of my favorite university presses for a long time was Johns Hopkins. I've showed this book before, Spirited Resistance. This is essentially about how misunderstanding of Native American cultural things led to conflict, or contributed to conflict, I shouldn't say led to, but contributed to conflict between the United States, colonial America in the early days of the United States, and then another book from Yale University Press, The Secret World of American Communism, which actually contains a lot of primary source documents from the Kremlin archives, kind of showing their attempts to, use American communists to spy on and gain information about the United States of America. So those are my two examples of University Press books. A Spirit of Resistance is actually, I think, a very good book. And if you're looking for information about communism in America, The Secret World of American Communism is a great place to go. So the second category in which these books fall in would just be interests that I pursued because I was interested in them. So this might not have anything to do with any kind of studying or academic program. This was just me, getting interested in something. And again, some of these books I've shown, and I'm not going to show all the books from all the different areas of interest that I have, but you may know that for a while I was interested in the goings-ons and the violence and the horror going on in sub-Saharan Central Africa around the Republic of the Congo and Uganda and Rwanda and Burundi. And this book by Christian Jennings, Across the Red River, talks about those conflicts, and I think it's a really good book. Probably second or third to We Wish to Inform You Tomorrow We Killed Our Families by Philip Gurevich. It's a really good book, really stark book, disturbing reading. One of my interests historically has always been World War I, and particularly American involvement in World War I. So I have this incredibly niche title called Soissons 1918. This is a story about one of the biggest battles in which American soldiers were involved, and one in which there were a lot of costly mistakes, costly in terms of lives, made by Allied and American command in 1918. So there's that book. It's good, but it is a dry military academic history. And then also one of my other interests, I think I mentioned before, is abstract expressionist art. And so I have this book called The Turning Point by April Kingsley about abstract expressionist art in the United States of America and its influence on American art in general. This is a really good book, and it covers most of the abstract expressionist artists, and it even talks about some of the women who are involved in the abstract expressionist artistic movement. And then the third area of just kind of things I'm interested in and reading about for general interest are just biographies. I really like biographies, and biographies of writers and thinkers are some of the biographies I like the most. So I read this incredibly big biography of H.L. Mencken by Fred Hobson called Mencken a Life. H.L. Mencken was one of the leading critics, cultural leaders in the United States for a period of time. For good or for bad, that was true, and I was interested enough in him to read that. And then also there's this biography of William James, kind of the father of American psychology, I believe, by Linda Simon, called Genuine Reality, A Life of William James, which was really interesting. William James is the brother of the novelist Henry James. Just a really interesting biography, and so I like that. So those would be the book examples, the kinds of books that I found, pursuing my interests or because of academic interest, or just, things that I like. So then the last question is to name books that you would recommend that have fewer than 250 ratings on GoodReads. So the first book I'm going to recommend is what I think is one of the great American World War I novels, and that is Through the Wheat, and war novels altogether. Through the Wheat by Thomas Boyd. There are a number of editions. I tried to add up all the ratings of the editions that I could find on GoodReads, and it came out to less than 250. In lots of ways, this book is the first real attempt by an American author to kind of give the experience of war and combat and the impact it has on the thinking, the psychological state of the soldiers who are involved. If you get to the end of the book, by the way, with Through the Wheat and with lots of war books, and you say to yourself, well, a lot of stuff happened. What was all that about? What was the point? Well, then the author's done a good job, I think, of conveying to you the impact and the impression that war has on the people involved. A lot of things happened. Some of it was terrible, some of it was memorable, but what was the point? And I think Through the Wheat does a good job of that. The next book on the list is a book I don't think I've ever mentioned at all on my channel, and that's Hepcats, Narcs, and Pipe Dreams, A History of America's Romance with Illegal Drugs by Jill Jones, or Jonas. This book will basically take you through the history of the United States relationship with legal drugs, like when we classified drugs as illegal, why we did, what kind of addiction problems there were, how drugs came to be seen as cool in the United States of America. I will tell you up front, this book is biased. It has an anti-drug bias. That's just the way it is. And I'll be honest with you, we should read biased works of history. I know that may sound antithetical, but once you've got a basic grounding in the ideas of what happened, you should read biased works of history to put together in your own mind an idea of why those things happen and what's significant and what's important and what's right and what's wrong. And so, I think this is just an excellent book. It taught me a lot about drugs and the history of drugs in the United States. One of my favorite books, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this. This book only had 45 ratings, I think, on GoodReads. The next book is one of my favorite books. I put it in my top 10 books of all times, called Gramercy Park, an American Bloomsbury. It's about the creative, artistic community which existed in the Gramercy Park neighborhood of New York City. And it is, just one of those kind of perfect books for me as a historian. It explores kind of artistic, cultural, intellectual history in what I think is a really interesting and clever way, and I really just like that book. It only has 16 ratings. The next book on my list would be, by the way, this would be a University Press book. This is the Johns Hopkins University Press book, as is the Hepcats, Narcs, and Pipe Dream book. The next book on my list would be an example of a good biography. I think this is a biography of Stephen Crane. It's called Badge of Courage, The Life of Stephen Crane by Linda Davis. It is a thorough and I think interesting and compassionate, without being overly laudatory, look at the life of Stephen Crane. On GoodReads, this book only had 15 ratings. And the last book will be a book about Africa, particularly about the Congo region of Africa, and that is The Assassination of Lumumba by Ludo DeWitt. This tells the story of the assassination of the Republic of Congo's first Prime Minister, Patrice Lumumba, who was removed essentially from power by a conspiracy with his enemies in Africa. The United States CIA and even the government of Belgium played a role in that. It is a really, I think, insightful book about the mess that European powers made in the Congo region of Africa, about the way in which the CIA and the United States approached the Cold War with almost a pure us versus them mentality, and I think it's really effectively done. And when I checked GoodReads, there were 0 ratings on that. So there you go. That is my list of books you've never heard of that I've read, with a recommendation there for 5 at the end, which you might think about reading. I'm going to tag some people because I do like this tag a lot. I'm going to tag Steve Donoghue because, man, is it going to be fun to get Steve to make a list of books nobody's ever heard of. And I'm pretty sure Steve doesn't go on GoodReads. Maybe he does. I want to tag Cathy Grimm. Cathy is a German professor in Ohio, and she has some interesting reading and interesting thoughts about those, so maybe she has some interesting books that very few people have read. Justin over the Ghost Reader, because he reads a lot of interesting books and has a lot of interesting stuff to say, and I have a feeling he may have read 1 or 2 books that are fairly rare. Sean the Book Maniac, I just watched Sean's interview discussion with the author Ronan Hession this morning on his channel, and he talked about the fact that people are always saying, you read books I've never heard of. Well, here you go, Sean. I can't remember the last time I tagged you or anybody else did, so I'm tagging you now. And then I want to tag Alex from what page you're on. Alex is kind enough to tag me. He reads widely, and I'd be interested to see what his list of books that nobody's ever heard of would look like. Anyway, there you go. There's the books you've never heard of tag. Again, thanks to Kazen for tagging me. Look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.